Today, almost all apps have async processes such as API requests, long running processes, etc. While the processes are working, usually developers place a loading view to show users that something is going on. Skeleton view is something which is built to address this need. An elegant way to show users that something is happening behind the scenes and also prepare them for which contents are waiting. If you want to know more about Skeleton View and more importantly, how you can contribute to the project, let's hear from Juanpe Catalan.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me here. And then my name is Juanpe Catalan. I'm from Seville, in Spain, and I'm a software engineer. I have been working in the software industry about 10 years now. And during this time, I have worked on many kinds of projects, like games, libraries, and application. I now work at Domestica. This is a creative community that where experts share their knowledge through online courses. And we are developing a universal application that is used by millions of users in different countries. And also improving the code base and releasing new features. And well, related to open source, I really love it and like to contribute in as much as possible. And yeah, I think that it's all about me.
Awesome, awesome. So, Juanpe, why did you decide to build Skeleton View in open source?
Okay, this is a good question. I said before I really like open source, and then I um, I made some libraries before SkeletonView, and because when I found that a piece of code could be useful for other devs, I always created a public repository and then publish them now. And I remember that in a few years ago that I was working on a project that uses skeleton, the skeleton technique, and for the loading stage. And well, I have to create the placeholder anytime for each view. Then I thought that I have to find a better way to do it, no, in an easy way. So I developed the first version of Skeleton View and with fewer components. And but I started only I create a simple private repository in order to use in my own projects. But I thought it could be useful as well for the devs. So I prepared a README file with some examples, organize a little bit the code, and release it. No, and yeah. Surprisingly, the library gained popularity quickly, and because appearing in some newsletters, also in the iOS Dev Weekly newsletter was the turning point because the traffic and downloads increased exponentially. You know? And what I decided open source is about is because of that. And also I think that when you publish a repository or a library and in open source has a big benefit that is the open source community can contribute to your project. So this is an important point, and it's grateful when someone creates a new pull request to fix a bug or release a new feature, you know, and develop a new feature. And in fact, sometimes I didn't know how to solve an issue, or I didn't have the bandwidth, and yeah, the community helps was crucial to the library. And
Awesome,
and yeah.
awesome. So, you mentioned that initially Skeleton View was a private project and then you made it public. So, you had to add a README file and you had to organize the code a little bit. If you want to build an open source project, what are the best practices that we can follow to make our project more accessible?
Okay, this is a really good question as well. For me, one of the most challenging thing when you create an open source library is to create a good public API that the library should be easy to use, and also I have always in mind that when I developing new features in the library is that if anyone want to use your library, they don't have to create a strong dependency on it. So I mean, if anyone want to remove your library, won't be a pain, no? And then this is why, for example, Skeleton View don't use custom views or complex piece of code. Just the native components, and I extend this component, no? And this is for me is a good point that an open source project should have. Also it's important to take care of breaking changes because it's a pain when you update a library, and appear errors or warning that you don't know what happened here. So when you develop a new feature, you have to consider that you shouldn't modify the API too much. And it's true that it's not always an easy task, but yeah, it's just something that when you make something public and release the version, you have to think that maybe you have to modify in the future, and then maybe it's not the best choice. No, you have to think more than if you are doing in your private project. No?
True, true, makes sense. So, have you faced any challenges while building in open source?
Well, these two things for me are very big challenge because I say that, no, is if you are working in a private project, maybe you can create something, and maybe it's not the best way, but you say, okay, I'm going to modify in the future, although never happened, but it's something that you can do. If you are releasing something that many users, many developers as well, because your customer are developers, are using, and if you want that someone uh, use your library in production, no, this is important. This is your goal. You have to make feel them confident about the use the library, no? And then it's something that you have to take into account. And also for me, I have three children, and sometimes a big challenge is to have the bandwidth to work on the project, because this is open source and it's free, and I'm not making a living from that. So have to find a good way of working and in a good rhythm. No? It's something that is harder for me.
Awesome, awesome. So, Juanpe, now let's talk about the community. How can
Mhm.
folks who are starting to get involved with open source contribute to Skeleton View? How can they get involved with the community of Skeleton View?
Okay. At the end, SkeletonView is an open source project, so there are many ways to that people can contribute. For example, the easiest way is to open an issue. So if you are using the library and you find something that doesn't work well, please look if there is already one issue open it, or just open a new one to keep improving the library. In fact, you can another way to contribute is that you can propose your own fixes and suggestion, and open a pull request with the changes. So it could be awesome. It's great when you see that. And in SkeletonView, for example, I think that I have some issues labeled with good first issue or help granted, and by me. And these issues are a good starting point as well, because it's on. If I mark issue like a good first issue, is because you don't have you don't have to have the full context of the library, so you can only read the issue, what happened, and then fix it. No? And when it's SkeletonView as well, it's an open source library, but you can become an open source if you want, an open source, sorry, an sponsor if you want, and now there are some sponsors, and I said before, I'm not making a living from that, but this indicates that someone appreciates the work
True,
and which
true.
motivates me to continue working on the project. So yeah, it's another way. Yeah, you can clone, or they can clone the repo and take a look. Then they can find weaknesses or improvements, and yeah, so at the end, when I use a open source library, for example, I also read the code, because maybe you only need a little part, and then the library is too complex, and you don't want to include or to add this whole library in your code. So I think it's a big way. You clone the repo and read the code, and see if you have to something to I don't know, to include in the library, to apport to the library, contribute to the library. Sorry.
Awesome. What should somebody know in order to contribute to Skeleton View? What tech stack should they be familiar with?
Well, the library is written in Swift, so I think that if anyone want to contribute, have to know Swift, and also it's a visual library, so it's important that know a little bit UI kit, because as I said before, I'm not using custom components, just extending the native ones. So they have to know how the UI kit components works, the life cycle, and how the application uh, works in runtime. So yeah.
Awesome. So now let's talk about the best practices one can use to raise a pull request.
Uh, the pull request, yeah, it's for me is my favorite part, because I think that pull requests and code reviews are the best way to share knowledge, no, between other devs. But there is an important stage, that is when developer is cooking the pull request, and I mean the owner of the pull request should provide the most context that they can. For example, what is the goal of the pull request, which changes have you made, or how you can test the changes, in order because if the more provided context, the best code review will be. So for me, it's the most important when you create a pull request and you wanted to you want to contribute an open source library or whatever, and whatever project, you have to explain very well what you are doing in order to do better code reviews, and also the best pull request is which bring values to the library,
Mhm.
fixes
Right.
a bug, or develops a new feature. It's true that during this time I find pull requests that only removes or adds an empty space or a new line. So for me, it's an example that is a bad pull request, because only want to appear in the contributors page, and it is something that you don't have. You don't mind the library, so you only have to appear in this page, and yeah.